All right, what I'm going to be going over today is plotting a triple integral and also actually setting it up based on a little phrase or a little saying that, if you want to say it like that, of what we have. So for example, right here, we want to plot the cylinder, this, where it is below the plane z equals negative y and above the xy plane. So the xy plane is talking about this little cross right here. And so we'll first start with the z equals negative y plane. If we think about previous classes, you know how there's like an xy plane. If you want to do y equals negative x, it's just kind of like that. That's exactly what we're going to do, but for this, it's zy. So it's going to be a straight line right here. And this, I just made it so it's just in 2D form. Just so it'll be a little bit simpler to comprehend, a little bit simpler to see. But if it's in 3D, it's basically saying too that plus, it could be plus 0x, or it could be any number x, honestly. So no matter what x value you'll put in there, it's still going to make the same equation. So it's going to be a plane rather than just a simple line. So, but it can be a little confusing with this right here. The y is right here. We want to make this the positive y, and this the positive z, and this the positive x. So it's kind of a little weird how it's going from this way here. And what this will be, say if we want to just have a line, we're going to go something like that. So you can see it's the z and the y, z and the y. This is going down right here, and this is going down right there, because it's positive right here. But because it's not just a line, we got to make sure that that's actually a plane. Because what this is saying with this plane, because it could be any amount of x value, it means that it can go this way, it can go this way, it can go this way, and this way. Because legit, any x value can work, because it's not mentioned there yet. And so this is the plane, this is what we're going to represent this, kind of like a rectangle. And if you see it, it looks like it actually is cutting right there in the very center. And that's something that we're really going to need to pay attention to. So it's going to be right there. And the reason why I put that there is you can see that it's below the plane, z equals negative y, and above the xy plane. So the xy plane, this right here, so it's got to be above this. It's got to be below this as well. And so this part right here, that doesn't matter. So we could just clear it up real quick. Clean it up. Or I'll take care of it for you guys. And then this. So far that's what's going to look like. So it's still going to be somewhere under here until it reaches the x and y plane. It's going to be somewhere in between this area. And so, remember, this is still going this way and all around. But for this specific one, we also want to have it with a cylinder of x squared plus y squared equals 9. And if we think of just a regular, like an xy plane, say let's make the xy plane, and we also learn that a simple circle, if it has x squared plus b squared, just get x squared plus y squared equals something, then it's going to be a circle. And that's exactly what this is right here. And because it's 9, it means that 9 squared equals 3. No, 9 equals 3 squared, sorry. So that means that this is going to be with a radius of 3. So the radius of 3. And so that's actually going to be really important for later parts. But that's what this is saying right here with this x and y plane. But because it's in a 3D plane, just like we mentioned with the z equals negative y plane, this is going to be the same thing. So it could be literally any z value. But we still got to remember, it's got to be above the xy plane and below the z equals negative y plane. So let's first draw a little cylinder right here, and it's going to go up so a certain amount. We don't know for sure yet, and so it's going to be a cylinder like that. The thing about this is it still has to satisfy what we learned or our experience with right here. It still has to be under this right here, under the plane that we just created. So I'll try to make it a little bit better. It's really hard to draw 3D, so don't feel bad if you mess up like me. So it's going to look something like that. See, those are the two objects that we have. So what we can do is that it needs to be under this, but also above this. So that means anything that's right here has to be taken away because it needs to be below this plane right here. So all this, all taken away. So I can just start erasing things, and because this little plane that we drew earlier, because that plane is going infinitely over here, it could also be around this area, so keep that in mind. And so it would include anything on this side of the x-axis. So anything over here includes. So that means we can erase this side for the cylinder. Can take this out real quick. So that part doesn't matter. And up here doesn't matter as long as it's under this plane right here. So it's going to be a little bit of a funky shape. So because it's a plane, remember we can keep this here. It's going to be like that. Now we can, let's see, it's going to be there. We can erase this real quick. Cool. So it's going to look something very similar to that. So now I guess I'll try to shade it in. It's still really hard to see and really visualize, but if that makes a little bit more sense, that I hope that can help a little bit. But it's going to be like in that region right there, and I could also provide a picture of me drawing on a regular piece of paper just to show that. And so yeah, so it's going to be under this plane. Remember that. And it's also going to be above this. So it's right around here. Remember, that's 3D. Okay, cool. And so now that we have that kind of pictured, and we could also keep this in mind as well, how this is, it's going to be, think of this, the y-x plane. It's going to be down here. That's what we're going to have shaded for the cylinder. Remember, this is the negative side, this is the positive side, so negative y. So it's going to be this part right here, that's why it's shaded. So now for setting up the triple integral with this. So what I learned with triple integrals, you can really, for the first one, just focus on everything that's 3D on the outside. And that's what you have to focus on for first. So, for example, right here, we have the cylinder, we have this equation, and so we got to remember that we got to keep it within these bounds. So if we want to make it in the z value first, so dz. So what is this going against? Because yeah, like the cylinder it doesn't really bound it from the top, nor really the bottom, honestly. What really bounds it is this xy plane, because that's the lowest it's going to go, and the z value. And the highest it's going to go is up here with right here, the z equals y, negative y. So whenever there's the z, I'm going to make sure we put this, z equals. So lower bound is the plane, 0, and it's going to be up to negative y. Because that's how it's going to go. It's going to be all the area from this z plane right here, all the way up to this line. So it's going to be all this inside, from the top to the bottom. So that's what it's going to be like. So 0 to negative y. Alright, and now what we can do is we can actually now focus on, now we can do the actual circle thing. So if we actually pay attention, so we just disregard the 3D graph right now, because we just took care of this, that's what takes care of the 3D part. If we think of this like a shadow, so say a light is coming from this z direction that we started out with, say it's going down, and we want to look at the whole thing. We want to look at what appears from the shadow of this image. It's going to look something like this. Because remember that it is going to be with the cylinder, and that's what this is, if it's at a bird's eye view. And that's what's important. We could just do things in 2D from now on. And so for this, say we want to start with the y. So now let's go to the dy section. And so that this is filled in right here, it's filled in from here to here. So this would be from y equals, and because it's a round thing right here, I mean this part right here is still lower than this, but it's still a point that we got to make sure. So we could do the function of this half circle right here. And because we have a y right here, we want to make things equal to y. So this equation right here, x squared plus y squared equals 9. Now so let's solve for y so we can actually put the function in here. So y equals 9 minus x squared. And because that y was squared, we got to square root of this all. So that's what it's going to look like. And because that's on the bottom, that's what we're going to have to put on the bottom. And it's going to be a negative because that's the function. So, boom. Because if it was positive, it would just be up here. This section right here. So let's do this. Let's make the lower bounds. Where y equals. It's going to be a negative square root of 9 minus x squared. And then we can see that it's going to stop at all points on the when x equals 0, no matter what y it is. So that's going to be this to 0. That's the upper bound. Alright, 2/3 of the way there. We're doing good. And now, this is one of those simplest parts. We want to make sure that the last 2 points are just numbers, so we can actually solve the integral eventually. So it's going to be 2 whole numbers, or if it's a fraction, decimal, whatever is needed. But in this case, it's going to be just random, really cool, really simple numbers. So for this, we're going to do the dx. So the changes, little changes with the x. So as we can see, it's just going to be from this point, this line. And so the lower bound is on the left, the upper bound is on the right. That's going to be from -3, because that's the radius, -3 to 3. And that is what it's like. If you can't read this, it's going to be from negative 3 to 3 for the dx. And this is going to be, put x equals. This is just what helps me understand it better, is making the equations. So x equals, so it's going to be from negative 3 to 3, as you can see here. And for the actual shaded in part, I'm going to want it from negative the square roots of 9 minus x squared. That's what this equation is right here. I'm going to do that till 0. So on the line right here. And then it's going to be from this with this 3D figure. So however you want to make this look a little bit nicer, that's what I would suggest. You just look something like this, 3D wise. So it's going to look a little bit ugly on the computer, but in handwriting it's going to be a little bit better. And that's how I solve it. That's what it looks like.